Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, and welcome to Cast of All Trades, the show where we talk about developing skills, exploring ideas, and following curiosity. I'm your host, Orion Siebert, and in this episode, I ask the question, when have I done enough? I talk about the difference between quitting and stopping at good enough, where you might find a good enough point for some people, pivoting and changing your good enough point, and much more. This episode is a good one for me to record personally, as I was able to think back and reflect on the things I've accomplished over the years, and how I can condense that information down into a simple process I can use again and again to decide for myself, when do I want to stop doing this thing, whatever this thing might be. I hope you'll be able to learn from my experiences, and if you want more episodes like this, where I share my thoughts and experiences on a topic, subscribe to the show so you don't miss out on more episodes like it. I believe that about covers it, so without further ado, when have you learned enough? I feel like this is a question that many generalists and jack of all trades don't consider right up until they start getting bored of the thing, until they start thinking to themselves, awesome, I'm learning a bunch of skills. When do I stop learning this new skill? When do I say, I've learned enough of this thing, it's time for me to move on to the next thing? This is especially common with newer generalists or people who are just stepping into this world of generalism. And I feel like I want to start this off by distinguishing the difference between quitting and calling good enough. When I think of quitting, I think that's typically when you set a reasonable endpoint for yourself and you give up without trying to break it down into more smaller, reasonable steps. And you just essentially you start doing a thing without the expectation of actually finishing it. You might have an end goal in mind, but you don't get there, and you don't try to either reconcile it or try to figure out a way to get there. Something like that. That's what I consider to be quitting. A good example of this is that many kids want to be professional YouTubers, for example, but they quit after 3 episodes because none of those 3 episodes blew up. No attempt to break it down into clear steps, no reflection, just surrendering when the going gets tough. Good enough, on the other hand, is when you've reached a designated endpoint and decide that you've done enough, that you're satisfied with how much you've done so far and you're ready to go on to the next thing. Continuing on the example of the YouTube kids, let's look at the kid who wants to be a professional YouTuber and sets a goal of posting an episode every week for a year, then decides that once that year is up, because it wasn't as much fun as he thought it would be, he decides, you know what, I've done enough. I'm satisfied with my work. I'm going to move on to the next thing. These are two different situations that end up with the same outcome of the person stops doing what they say they want to do. They ultimately say, I'm no longer doing this thing. The main difference is the mindset behind it of, are you surrendering because it's gotten too hard for you and you don't want to keep going with it? Sometimes it is right to quit, but in my mind, whenever possible, I would rather get to that good enough point and then stop there, where I say to myself, I'm satisfied with the work I've done so far, versus this is too hard, I'm not going to keep going. So when thinking about good enough, what are the most common good enough points that you might want to consider looking at? There's a couple that came to mind for me, 3 in particular: project completion, competitions/certifications, and goals hit. Let's start with project completion. This one is probably the most obvious of the bunch of, you know, when you've done enough, once you have the tangible finished product in your hand. It's very easy to figure out when you're done because you can see it for yourself of, you have the finished thing in your hand. You know that this thing is done. A good example of this would be in making musical instruments, in completing to create a computer program, in rebuilding a bathroom. It's very clear when the work is done because you have the finished piece. This is probably one of my favorite ways of going about learning skills, just because it's very obvious for me when I'm done. And also, at the end of it, I have a physical thing I can look back on and reflect on every once in a while when I see it to say, oh yeah, I learned how to do this thing. Here's the physical proof I have that I can do the thing. And it's super cool, and it's fun memories to look back on. Next is competitions/certifications. This is perhaps entering or winning or placing a sort of ranking in a competition, test, or something similar. Example being your goal being place X in Y competition. A great example of this in my life was actually in college, where I was taking a ballroom dancing class, and I made it my goal at the beginning of the semester that I wanted to place first in one of my ballroom dancing competitions. In particular, I decided I wanted to place first in the very last ballroom dancing medals exam competition. And I had one shot to do it. There was a set, clear date for the competition, and I knew what I wanted my outcome to be. I had one chance to do this, so I had to work hard, dedicate myself to learning how to do this ballroom dance routine, and in the end, I did end up placing first by 1 point, so very satisfying. But it was a very clear way for me to know I am making progress in the skill and I know when I've accomplished my goal, because again, there is a tangible outcome. There's a way for me to look at something and say, look at that certification, look at that award, look at that trophy, look at that medal. I did that thing. That's the skill I developed, and here's the proof that I developed it. Some other examples of competitions or certifications might be entering a bodybuilding competition, going and running a marathon, doing a martial arts competition, or getting a SEO certification or 3D modeling certification, etc. This is very similar to the physical project-based completion of a thing, because at the end you do still get some sort of reward. You get a little thing that you can show around to say, I did the thing, I can do the skill. But the way that this is different is that typically the competition slash certification sort of exams or goals, those are mostly going to be more around either mental skill development or through like physical skill development. It's typically better for the physical slash athletic skills just because more competitions are there around it. But mental skills are also a big thing, especially when you're doing certification exams, such as 3D modeling or SEO, like I mentioned earlier. Last but certainly not least is the goals hit. This is what I'm calling the arbitrary goal set for yourself at the beginning, where you want to hit a certain number. For example, I want to bench press 250 pounds in a set of 5 reps. There isn't really a competition for that. There isn't really a project-based thing that at the very end you can say, ah yes, look at this physical, tangible object that I have in my hands that can show that I did indeed develop my skills enough to bench press 250 pounds at 5 reps. That's what makes this more of a arbitrary goal hit as opposed to a competition-based thing or a project-based thing. Another example might be, I want to be able to pick this type of lock in 5 seconds, or I want to be able to play every movement of Moonlight Sonata from memory, back to back to back, without making any mistakes from memory. And basically, goals are good for the arbitrary stuff that you want to do that perhaps doesn't have a natural or obvious endpoint. Yes, sometimes it does, such as the Moonlight Sonata, be able to play all the movements of it back to back from memory. There's a clear and obvious endpoint. You're going to play the thing, you can do the thing. But there isn't necessarily a award or a project or a physical tangible thing that you can have to show that yes, you have done this thing. Now, these arbitrary goals can oftentimes become competition-based goals or have more of a deadline feel, sort of like the competition-based goals, by creating your own deadline of sorts, such as if we're going off of the Moonlight Sonata example, what if you were to create your own piano recital and you had a set date for yourself where you said, I'm going to have this piano piece done by this time for this recital date? Then perhaps at the recital you get a little video showing that yes, you did do the thing. So in some ways you can turn the arbitrary goals into project-based or competition certification-based goals, but overall this category is just everything else that doesn't cleanly fall into the project-based, you are actively creating a thing for yourself, and the competition slash certification-based thing where you're doing something and someone else is giving you an award. This arbitrary goal setting is just a sort of catch-all category for everything else. So now that we have these 3 points in mind, how are you going to decide what your good enough point is for you? If you're not just going off of the project-based certification, completion, competitions, or arbitrary goals, what are some of the things you want to keep in mind or that you should keep in mind when you're deciding your good enough point? There's a couple questions I like to ask, 3 in particular. What's useful, what's extra, and are you having fun? So answering the first question is, what is actually useful? Are you learning a skill for a specific reason, such as for work? If so, how good do you actually need to be at the skill, and what do you actually need to know? For example, say you want to learn French for your month-long vacation in France. Great, love it, love language learning. Do you think that you need to know how to talk about chemistry and physics in French? Probably not. If you're going to learn how to do 3D modeling and 3D print figurines for your D&D games, do you think you need to know how to run wind tunnel simulations in SolidWorks? It's a 3D modeling software, and there's a capability of it there. Clearly, you should probably know how to do this. Well, probably not. If you want to learn how to sing and play Piano Man at the same time, do you think you need to learn every single chord and key combination on the piano? No, probably not. I think you get my point. Look at what you're actually going to be doing for learning this skill. What's the end goal that you want to be able to do with it? Then work backwards from there to see what you actually need to learn. When learning French to go on vacation, learn vacational French. Learn how to order food at a restaurant. Learn how to ask, how do I get around to certain places? Great. Maybe learn some other basic things here and there. For 3D modeling and 3D printing D&D figures, learn how to do basic 3D rendering. Learn the basic shapes. Learn how to put them together. Perhaps learn how to do 3D printing materials, different types of materials, and how that works. But you don't need to learn how to do wind tunnel simulations or how to do thermal simulations. That doesn't matter. It's not relevant. If you want to learn how to sing and play Piano Man at the same time, then no, you don't need to learn every single chord on the piano. You don't need to learn every single key. In fact, you probably don't even need to learn most things, since as someone who can play and sing Piano Man at the same time, you don't need to know very much about music. You just need to know maybe 3 or 4 chords to play on one hand. You need to know how to read music with and play with the other. You need to know the words of Piano Man. And that's basically it. It's a very simple piece. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to know how to play jazz and blues and classical and rock and every single other type of genre. Look at Piano Man and see what are the actual tangible skills, the actual things I need to know to learn how to play and sing this piece. You don't need to do any further than that. So, what is actually useful for the skill you're trying to develop? Next, what is extra? What if you want to go a little bit further? What else would you want to learn/do? Perhaps you boot up SolidWorks with the intention of learning how to design 3D models for your D&D figures. And then while you're in there, you realize, oh, there's a section for applying materials to your 3D minifigures. That's cool. Well, that was an extra thing. You didn't really need to know how to do that, but it's kind of cool. This is, when I think about the what's extra, it's the what would be nice to add on as well as you're learning. If you have extra time, if you decide, this is fun, I want to keep on going and doing more with this. Because sometimes we just go and do the thing, we say, you know what, that's good. I enjoyed this, I learned the skills that were useful, but I don't want to learn anymore. But if you do have fun with it, and you want to keep going, then when you get to the what's extra of what else can I learn, then that's where this category will come up. This is where you decide, actually, I do want to learn how to talk about chemistry and physics and philosophy and whatever else in French, because I'm enjoying learning French. You don't need to know how to do it, but it's extra, it's kind of cool. Then for the pianist who learns how to play and sing Piano Man, after that you say, okay, that was fun. I want to learn how to play and sing maybe another piece. Instead of Piano Man, what if I were to learn and play Somewhere Over the Rainbow? That's another fun one. It's a different piece, some similar aspects. What else am I going to need to know to play that piece? Or what if I want to transition to classical or other pieces? The key point here is to learn what you need when you need it. Then, once you learn what you need, then you can go looking elsewhere to say, what else do I want to learn? What's the extra things, the extra cherries on top that you can add on? The ice cream is the main part of the sundae. The cherry is nice, but it's not needed. Finally, a very important question when deciding your good enough point is, I've mentioned it a little bit already, but are you having any fun doing it? If you're not enjoying what you're learning, or you're not looking forward to the outcome of what you're trying to develop and do for yourself, then what's the point of dealing up with all the hardships along the way? What are you doing? Yes, sometimes we have to go and learn and develop skills that perhaps we don't want to, but oftentimes when we look at the long run, we're doing it because we want a certain outcome from these skills. With that in mind, you have to figure out for yourself, is the pain I'm going through to learn this skill worth it for the outcome that I ultimately want at the end? So, are you having fun? And also, how can you make it fun along the way? Because if you're not having fun learning a skill, there's probably a way that you can make it more fun. So, ask yourself this question: what would this be like if it was more fun? With that in mind, what should you do if you find yourself in over your head, where you're thinking, ah, gosh, I dedicated myself to having a too lofty of goal? Because sometimes you set too lofty of goals and need to reevaluate. Don't consider this quitting, consider this pivoting. That's the way that I like to think of it. Because this often happens when you start something with little knowledge of how it actually works or what it's actually going to be like. Then, partway through developing your new skill and working towards this goal, you learn how things work. You learn that this is going to be much more difficult than you realize, or maybe you learn that this is much easier than you realize and you want to up the game a little bit. For example, I originally started this podcast with the wholehearted intention of posting 100 episodes before I reevaluated if I wanted to continue podcasting. Now I've committed to hitting the 1 year mark and reevaluating then, because I have a better understanding of myself and the whole podcasting process as a whole. For the most part, I enjoy it. It's pretty good, it's pretty fun, but there's a number of things in it that are much more difficult than I thought they would be. So I figure instead of going to 100 episodes before I reevaluate if I want to keep on doing this, I'm going to hit the 1 year mark, and then once I hit that 1 year mark, I'll reevaluate for myself then and say, is this what I want to keep on doing? What are the outcomes that I ultimately want from doing this thing? I would not call that quitting, I call it pivoting, because I go through it with the intention of doing this thing. I set my goals a little bit too high for what I was expecting. I brought it down, I pivoted, I changed my mind, and I'm continuing to follow through on these new goals that I've set for myself. So, what should you do when you've ultimately hit your good enough point and you decide to call it quits? You say, I've done enough, I'm ready to move on to the next skill. Should you just give up the thing that you're doing altogether and just drop it and pretend like it never happened? No, absolutely not. Here I want to briefly touch a bit on growing versus maintaining skills. It is far, far easier to maintain a skill than it is to grow and develop skills. While you're developing one skill, you're likely not going to be able to develop other skills simultaneously. That's when it's good to pull back and get into maintaining your other current skill set. A good example of this is it's difficult and time consuming to work your way up from nothing to being able to bench press 250 pounds at 5 reps per set. But once you're there, it's not too difficult to maintain being able to do that. You're not going to have to intake nearly as much protein. Perhaps your workouts might actually even lighten up a little bit. But getting to that point and maintaining that point is going to be a much different process. Just because you've spent hundreds of hours dedicating yourself to learning and developing a new skill doesn't mean you always have to dedicate hundreds of hours, hundreds of more hours continuously to maintain that skill. Typically, it only takes 1 to 2 hours a week to really maintain a skill. It just depends on what skill that is. Regularly keep it fresh in your mind. You don't have to dig too much into it, but just keep it at the top of your head of, this is how I do this thing, basically. It might be practicing piano once or twice a week to maintain that level of professionality, being able to play certain pieces, just play them over and over again, a little bit at a time. You don't have to learn and continue to play the same piece for hours and hours on end once you already have it down. Typically, it just takes playing it once or twice a day or even once or twice a week or so to keep that and maintain the level of skill on that instrument of those songs. And on the point of piano, I want to talk a bit about returning to previous skills. Perhaps you decided that a skill just isn't worth maintaining at all. You learn something for a while, you think that's awesome, that's fun, I've done the thing, now I think I'm just going to drop it for a while. You don't feel like maintaining it, you don't really need it right now, and you just want to go off and do other things. You just don't have time to maintain this current skill. The good thing is, once you've done something once, it's easier to learn it a second time around because you don't have to go through all the research and figuring out, how do I learn this thing from scratch? You already know how to learn the thing, and you won't be starting from scratch then. When you come back to a skill you haven't developed in a while, you already have the foundations there. You already have some latent muscle memory of how to do the thing. You may have to refresh yourself a little bit on certain aspects, but you probably won't be starting from nothing. For many of us, we may never come back to skills that we once had. For me, I grew up playing piano. I played regularly for 14 years, if not more. And currently, I don't know if I'll ever really come back to playing it again regularly. And honestly, that's alright. I know that if I wanted to pick up the piano again, that I could. I have the sheet music. I know how to practice. I know how to play. I know how to start from nothing. I know how to work my way up. I know how to practice. I know how to break down songs into individual pieces to practice those bits until I can get them drilled back into muscle memory. I know if I really wanted to, I could pick up playing the piano again. This is all to say that sometimes you might have to drop a skill for a while. You might not be able to maintain it. But down the line, if you want to learn how to play piano again, if you want to learn martial arts again, if you want to go and do a skill again, it's going to be much easier learning it the second time than it was the first. If you learned it for a second time, you can learn it for a third, or a fourth, or a fifth. It's always easier to pick up a skill again at a later point than it was to first pick it up to begin with. So in summary, there's a difference between quitting and stopping when you've reached good enough. There are many ways to decide where good enough is for you, whether that be project completion, competition, certification, and just arbitrary goals, just to name a few. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide when you've done good enough. That may mean changing and pivoting your goals once you have a better understanding of what you're doing, or it might just mean you set the goal once, you go for it, and you actually accomplish it, and you do great. Finally, once you've done enough, deciding on what to do next, whether that be continuing to develop the skill, putting it on hold in the maintenance category, or dropping it altogether and maybe coming back to it at a later date. Ultimately, the decision is yours, and you have to decide for yourself when you've done enough. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share with a friend you think would like it, or share it on social media. It would absolutely mean the world to me and helps the podcast grow so much. With all that said, thanks for listening. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later. Ciao.